I like to eat outside when the weather is nice, but I don't have a table, and I don't even have a chair. But as I lay there watching my lunchtime entertainment, I realized that I have been really underestimating the ability of my feet. Now this says that I'm not a biologist, but basic logic says feet are actually the same as hands since they both have 5 flexible digits. So today I'm going to try to build this table using my feet to do everything my hands usually would for literally no other reason than I am the French word for delayed. Let's get started. The table I'm going to make is 5 of these long and 3 of these wide, and luckily for me I totally forgot about all this wood hidden underneath this tarp, which should be more than enough for all these table ingredients I need to make. So I got out my first piece of lumber, but then I needed to get my tape measure, and it was at this point I realized this challenge was going to be a lot harder than I thought because of these 3 rules. Rule 1 is that foot is the new hand, so that means my hands cannot grab and use tools, but since they are now equivalent to my feet, they can apply pressure while my foot does the work. Rule 2 I haven't come up with yet, and Rule 3 is actually for you phalange freaks. Keep it zipped during the whole video, buddy, and yes, that means you, Isaac. Alright, after turning my tape measure into a 27-footer, my first real challenge was to open the stupid thing, which surprisingly wasn't all that difficult. And once I got it locked open, I placed it onto the 3x1 and then needed to measure out 11.5 inches for my first boards, which meant I needed a measurement marking utensil, and unfortunately for me, those resided in a penthouse apartment 41 inches off the floor. But after a little bit of struggle and a show of freakish toe dexterity, I brought the pen over and carefully marked at exactly 11.5 inches, with about a ½ inch margin. Now I had to draw a perfectly straight line, which meant I needed my speed square, and even though I may look like Ms. Biles, I don't have her range of motion or medals, so I had to employ the ye olden flail around blindly while upside down until I could grab the speed square with my toes trick. Once I got the square on the triangle, I used it to draw a perfect line at a subway foot long.
Yo, that is perfect.
And then after further review, used it to draw a perfect line at 11.5 inch again, but closer. Next, I needed a cutting tool, but there was simply no way I could make a straight cut with the handsaw. And to make matters worse, my wife walked in on me, and I think I'd rather have been caught playing with a different kind of wood.
What's up?
So that meant that I had to use this little guy, and with a bit of persuasion, I brought it out of its nest to the wood-cutting part of my garage. I think Mr. DeWalt must have conferred with Tarantino when designing this thing, because I could set it up suspiciously easy with just my feet, and in fact the hardest part of the whole process was carefully plugging the electrical umbilical cord into the outlet.
Come on. Yes. Yes.
And after testing to make sure it worked, I was fairly confident I'd be keeping all of my body parts attached for the duration of the video.
A little bit scary.
Using my adjustable thumbs, I loaded my workpiece onto the saw, and instead of holding the piece down whilst cutting, I decided to do the safe thing and set up this clamp to hold my wood for me, which gave me a new appreciation for the twistability of my hands. 4 hours later, I lined up my cut, tightened the clamp as much as I could, and honestly just hoped my shin wouldn't be greeted by a piece of wood at Mach 5. I could now operate a saw just with my meaty grippers, which was great since I needed 8 more of these, and instead of painstakingly measuring out each one, I grabbed a clamp and this piece of scrap 2x4 and painstakingly tried to set up a stop, which is astronomically more difficult when you don't have hands. Eventually I got it, but it was too short, so I had to relocate it and accidentally took apart my clamp in the process.
Oh, frick, what the heck? Oh, actually, no, that was way easier than I thought. Am I getting good at this thing or what? I'm even itching my head like a freaking monkey.
Genetic crisis aside, all I needed was to verticalize the stop, and once I clamped it in place, I removed the sample piece, released the clamp, slid the material against the stop, reclamped it, and then cut with impunity. After verifying that I was in fact impugned, I just had to repeat that process 7 more times. And all this hands-free cutting is great, because now I can doom scroll while using my saw. But it wasn't so great when I found this meme of somebody selling my personal info online. Thankfully, I use Delete Me, whose favorite thing in the whole wide world is to remove your personal data from data broker websites, and their second favorite thing is sponsoring this video. Data brokers can legally collect and sell your personal data, which isn't very cash money of them, and DeleteMe continually removes your private data from these websites, which is very cash money of them. I personally use DeleteMe because I do this YouTube thing full time, and if somebody stole my identity and wrecked my channel, I'd have to go find a 9-to-5, which would be difficult because nobody is looking for an engineer who can't engineer a working project. DeleteMe has been the leading expert in personal data removal for over 15 years, and was recently named the #1 data removal service by Wirecutter, which is a pretty high ranking last time I checked. My recent privacy report showed that DeleteMe had found and removed 2 listings of me and scanned over 300 different listings. And if I ever wanted to submit a custom request or need help with anything, I can talk to a real person. Hoof it over to joindeleteme.com/KerrConcept to get 20% off DeleteMe consumer plans when you use my code KerrConcept at checkout. Or if you're fancy, just scan this QR code with your intelligent brick of sand. Again, that's joindeleteme.com/KerrConcept, and please, 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 you have to use my code KerrConcept. I'm not above begging. Thanks again to DeleteMe for sponsoring this video. Now back to keeping all 10 of my toes attached to my body. Okay, all my 3/4 by 2.5s were cut now, which meant all that work up to this point was only for these 9 pieces, and I was super excited by that. But now I had a process, so after selecting a tasty 1x4 and measuring out to the correct length, I employed Ol' Speedy again, and I've gotta say that holding and using a pin with your piggies is not as easy as it sounds. I needed to cut a farmer's dozen of these boards, so that meant setting up another stop. But due to my saw providing me with this British-sized lip, I had to diagonalize the stop, which was actually fairly easy to install, and worked perfectly for cutting all the 1x4s. Up next were more 1x4s, but of the long persuasion, and I think you get the gist by now. Grab material, measure, mark, square, load, clamp, cut, clear, and then I repeated that 3 more times to get the table's apron pieces. These large boards are the last pieces my dogs needed to bark at, and the 1x6 were too heavy for me to pick up with my toes, so I invented a fun new way to load the board and bruise my ankles at the same time. 2 1x6s were cut that fateful night, which meant next up were the table legs and a physics problem. If Jimmy has one 8-footer 4x4, how does he get 4 legs at 30 inches a pop out of it? That's a trick question, since Jimmy has actually had 2 8-footers this whole time. These big mamas were actually heavy, and after slinging ink at a predetermined location, I found that I couldn't get the clamp tight enough to hold it down. So I put this little stack underneath to try to level it out, and then I immediately unput the stack when I moved the leg. But like my grandpa always said, when cutting 4x4s on your miter saw with your feet, just use another saw to hold your workpiece down. And that actually worked perfectly, thanks Big G, and from there it was business as usual to cut the legs whilst not cutting my legs. The final 4 pieces to make were these miter joints, with miter being Latin for 45 degrees, and with that factoid being a lie. After almost dying trying to load my piece, I turned a butt into a miter, and then marked out Pythagorean's favorite flavor of triangle. But when I brought the piece over to cut, I found the angle to be right, but it wasn't correct. Luckily for me, it's 2026, so even my saw now swings both ways, and once I finished making 315 degrees worth of cuts, I had successfully made all the pieces for a table only using my feet. But all of that was the easy part, because after rehibernating my saw and laying out the top of the table, which is known in the industry as the tabletop, I had to somehow join all of these pieces together. So I got this jig from a man named Craig, and then I got this jig from a man named Craig, which should allow me to make these pocket hole joints. But first, I had to open the box. You know, it's times like these I'm reminded how grateful I am to have hands. And it's also times like these I am grateful that no one ever compares me to another YouTuber whose whole shtick is doing stuff barefooted, so I'm sure this video won't add any fuel to that fire. After over 10 minutes of the worst ASMR unboxing video ever, I finally got Craig out of the box, and I'm told that it's going to be so easy to operate.
Oh, that's gonna be so easy to operate.
But that's when I had the misfortune of reading the setup instructions.
Slide stop collar to match material thickness and tighten set screw? I don't know if I am capable of doing that.
As a talking donkey once said, where there's a will, there's a way, and I may not have a smoking hot dragon to fly on, but I do apparently have monkey toes that will allow me to open anything given enough time.
Yes!
Now I simply had to open this plastic bag, get this collar out and put it around the drill bit exactly at this 3/4 inch mark, and then tighten a tiny set screw with this tool, all without using my hands, which should be impossible. But my cost had been sunk at this point, so I used these snippers with my grippers to free the collar and tool from their polymer prison, and then miraculously flipped the collar up so that I could carefully slide the drill bit into it.
Grab this somehow. Okay, easy does it. Easy frickin' does it. Come on. Oh, okay. No, I pulled it out too far.
After fixing my error, I realized the only way I could possibly tighten this screw is if I had a hand, and luckily I had an iron one giving me the clamp me eyes from across the club. This lovely lady can hold the drill bit while I work my magic, so after I brought the bit over, snapped my big toe off, and got into work position, I estimated where the collar depth would be and clamped the bit down. Now came the tricky part of putting the collar on, or at least it would have been tricky if I weren't so cracked.
Yo, what? Am I even human, bro? What the freak?
The collar was even perfect height too, but now came the actual impossible part. I mean, there's just no way I could hold this small Allen tool with my tutters, get it lined up perfectly with the set screw head, and then press against it while twisting. It's just not possible. Yeah, I'm probably gonna have to cheat on this. Wait a minute.
Legitimately? Holy crap. Oh, let's frickin' go.
Being able to tighten the set screw legitimately stun-locked me.
We got it. I mean, I don't know. That's crazy. I don't know.
And it seemed to be on there perfectly tight. But just as every block boy needs a little love, every good bit needs a little drill. And this time I was smart and used my resources to make grabbing the drills a much easier affair than getting the square. Loading the bit into the drill was child's play compared to the feat my feet had just accomplished. And after grabbing a piece of scrap wood and straight up jigging it, it took me a hot minute to figure out the best angle of attack. But it turned out to be about 45 degrees.
Okay.
I could drill just fine if I pushed on the back with one foot while pulling the trigger with the other, and the hardest part was just getting into the hole, am I right, fellas? These pocket holes were so good looking they were about to make me act up, but now it was time for the big leagues, so I grabbed an actual table piece and it took me over 6 minutes of abdominal agony just to make 4 holes. With that board done, I only had 140 holes left to drill, and it took all of my willpower to stop from screaming in the night. My next 3 hours of miserable existence looked like this. Grab a board, load it into the jig, clamp it down, sit down, grab the drill, precisely navigate the drill bit into the hole while doing a weighted V-crunch, press down with one leg while pushing up with the other, pull the drill out, do the other pocket hole, unclamp, stand up, rotate the board, and then start the process all over. And then I did that for 23 boards for the tabletop, 4 boards for the apron pieces, and then finally pocket hold the miter joints, miter being French for difficult to pocket hole with your stompers. 145 holes had been made, minus the one I was about to put in my skull during this endeavor, and now I could finally move on to assembling the table, but not without cleaning up my workspace first because I was tired of living in squalor. I then moved the tabletop to a flat spot of the garage, collected some wood glue, and gifted my impact driver the ability to drive square heads. The pocket holes require these special screws that come in a lidded box, so I very carefully removed the lid without spilling a single drop.
Yes. No!
Next, I cleared all this crap away from my shelves so that I could assemble against an unmovable object, and I figured the corner was as good a place as any to start. Getting the screws into their homes was infuriating because the pockets have a center hole the screw shaft needs to get into, otherwise it sticks out too far and screws in at the wrong angle. So I just kind of had to wiggle each screw around until they fell into place. Speaking of wiggling, this board. And since I couldn't hold it down, I employed this Electron briefcase to keep everything in its place while I guess I'll use that later. First, I had to glue the joint, and this part was just a little too suggestive to have out there for free. But once the glue was applied, I made sure everything was in the exact right place before screwing.
No, come on!
To screw the boards together, I used the classic double board angler setup with optional ground knuckle and table palm supports to achieve a floating skew attack on the screw, which was quite effective.
Okay.
But after I couldn't get it to work a second time, and very nearly crashed out when my square bit came off and I couldn't grab it,
I'm legitimately so close to crashing out right now.
I just wedged the handle between my toes, and that seemed to work great. You can always tell it's good craftsmanship when you can move the piece just from the mismatch in planes, but this is a foot-made table after all, so expectations shouldn't be that high. After I couldn't get the glue working, I decided the table was here for a good time, not a long time. And from here it was pretty straightforward to finish assembling the tabletop's exoskeleton. Now the top was definitely looking table-shaped, which was great news since I'm making a table. But there was a decided lack of slats in the middle, and when I was laying them out, I had the weirdest dream that all of my slats on one side were a 1/4 inch too long. Thankfully, it was all just a dream, but now my slats weren't leaving any room for Jesus, and in this case, Jesus is 571 thou wide. So I figured I'd just model up some spacers. Oh, right, the foot thing. As with everything thus far, 3D modeling with my feet just took a lot more time and patience than it does with my hands. But eventually I made the 2 spacers I needed, and thankfully Rule 2 lets me export and slice using my hands, so all I had to do was turn on the printer and wait for it to do its thing. After gently removing the pieces from their slumber, I ferried the pieces over to the other side, but they wouldn't pay me nor even fix a price until I got them there. I then installed the spacers and spacees, and at this point using my feet to run screws was getting scary easy. So to make myself appear human, I made sure to split this board in half and run the screws out the top, all according to plan. But the table still looked pretty good as a 10-foot table, so I kept going and installed the middle spacers followed by the 9 middle slats. Now I had to remove these blocks so I could use them on the other side, but unfortunately nothing is simple when you're working with your trotters, and I almost ruined the entire tabletop trying to lay it back down. I had to use a battery ram to get one of the final slats in position, but from there everything went smoothly, and 6 slats later I had a finished tabletop that didn't look half bad considering the tools I was blessed to work with. But this table and this table didn't quite look the same, and that's because it's a dining table and therefore needs an apron. I started by placing the table legs next to the apron piece, and then got this large clamp out and used my human legs to clamp the table legs to keep the apron in the right place. I then eyeballed the measurement using my speed square, loaded a screw into the chamber, and then put it even further in the chamber. After putting more screw in and screwing screw a couple more times, I had installed my first apron piece, which seemed pretty sturdy, so I flipped the table around and did the same thing for the other side. My next task was to install the long apron pieces, but I checked and they were too long for my clamp, so that was no longer my problem, and I focused on installing the table legs instead. All these needed were a little lovin', touchin', and squeezin', and also 2 screws, even though that wasn't in the song. The legs were as sturdy as the first pig's house, but that was fine by me since I don't plan to encounter any wolves, so I went ahead and installed the second pair of legs for a total of 6 legs now on the table. Finally, the long apron could be installed, and I did that by using the battery to keep it in place while I attached it to the tabletop and then to the legs, which made the legs not as shaky. Now there was just one piece to go, and I could hardly contain my excitement. I loaded the final pocket hole with its assigned screw, and then there were only 11 screw tightenings between me and Destiny, and let me tell you, Destiny sure looks a whole lot like one smoking hot table. There was just one small problem. It hadn't really occurred to me that I'd have to flip the table over, but after sacrificing my hand as a wedge, I was able to get the table up just enough so it could slide down my shin. While I'm working on flipping this thing over, you could check out my Patreon for more content if you're interested in that sort of thing. And I'm also auctioning off this very shirt I'm wearing in the video on eBay, complete with stains, since I'll never wear it again.
We have a table! Alright!
So there we go, an outdoor table made entirely using my legs and feet, which becomes extremely obvious when you get closer. But an outdoor table needs to be outdoors, so after bringing it out back, I could finally eat my lunch in peace. Last thing, don't forget to protect your privacy and personal info with Delete Me by clicking the link below and using my code KERCONCEPT for 20% off. Okay, thanks, bye.